Well, let me first tell you what emotional intelligence isn't. It isn't about being nice, and it isn't about letting all your emotions hang out. So, Daniel Goleman, who is a psychologist and an author, came up with the term of emotional intelligence maybe about 20 years ago. And how he defines it is really managing your feelings and making sure that they're expressed appropriately and effectively. And the result is that people can work together smoothly toward a common goal. So the good news about this is, whereas regular IQ, cognitive intelligence, remains relatively stable throughout our lifetime, emotional intelligence doesn't have to. You can work on it and improve. So there's three components of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-control, and empathy. So self-awareness really just has to do with seeing and owning our strengths, revealing our blind spots, and also knowing which emotions we're feeling and why we're feeling them. Now, the greater our self-awareness, the more we can develop self-control. But self-control is not over-control. It's not about stifling our emotions or stifling our spontaneity. It really is just about making sure that we have our emotions in control and managing our negative emotions. Now, when I say negative emotions, I really don't think we have any negative emotions. They all just are. But you can think of them as sort of emotions that tend to get you in trouble when you think of negative emotions. So empathy is our social radar, or you can think of it like as social GPS, helping us to know how to react to people, the ability to understand other people's perspectives. And basically what you need in order to have empathy is the ability to read people's emotions, to see, when they're expressing something, what is behind that? What's the emotion behind what they're saying? So when I started my consulting business about 6 years ago, I was looking for an instrument that I could use in the business setting. And I ran across the Simmons Emotional Intelligence Profile. And I contacted somebody who was trained in interpretation, and you do have to be trained because although it may look straightforward, it really isn't. So talked to this guy, and he said, well, if you're at all interested in this, you need to take it. I'm like, okay, great. So I took it, and then I scheduled a feedback session with him. And so let me just say that at that time, I was just starting out. It was at the height of the recession. It was summertime. There wasn't a lot of networking going on, and I'm sitting there, in my office, getting discouraged, getting kind of depressed, thinking, gee, can I really make a living at this, or am I going to have to get a real job? So it was kind of a crossroads for me. Okay, so fast forward to my feedback session, and most of what he told me, I pretty much already knew because I've taken, many of these kinds of personality profiles. But what he told me is that the profile indicated that I was in some kind of turmoil, like emotional turmoil. And I thought, wow, that can pick this up. That's amazing. Because it just seemed like it was really sensitive to pick something like that up. So I thought, well, I think I'm going to stick with this profile to help me in terms of doing my coaching and also doing some consulting. And I have found the Simmons to really be the most accurate and the most useful instrument in the business setting. So, the Simmons profile measures really how our feelings affect our behavior. And it measures 13 characteristics, and it provides insight into how somebody can be expected to perform on the job. It's really unusually accurate. It has been given like a 95% to 97% accuracy rating, which is really unheard of in this kind of testing. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand out to you guys some actual profiles. This is what I get when somebody decides to take it. And there are some people in this room who have already taken it. Please know that none of these are yours, so you don't have to worry about that. So just, I'm gonna pass it around, take one, and we'll go from there.
Question. You said that it can be used to determine how a person would perform in a job.
Right.
There's other applications though besides
Oh,
that,
of course,
correct?
of course. I mean, you
Marina?
can, that's how I use it a lot. But you know, if you're looking to change careers, certainly it can help you with that. If you just want to, you know, become a more emotionally intelligent person in general, it will help you. So anyway, so I'm going to go through all the 13 characteristics. So the first one is energy, and you can follow along when you get your particular sheet. And if you notice, I have written on the sheet that you get just a descriptor about what kind of person this is and what kind of job, or what kind of, basically
You
a
might need
description
one.
in terms of what kind of a job this person would do well at. Okay, so the first one is energy, and energy is really a measure of our emotional energy, basically just the capacity that a person has to get things done. So you can kind of think of it as their engine, you know, how much are they able to accomplish? Now stress, when you get high scores on stress, it means that you have some internal stress that is probably going to affect how you perform on the job. You know, that just makes sense. The next scale is optimism. Now, if you have a low score in optimism, you're going to come across as kind of gloomy, fault-finding, critical, that kind of a person. You might blame other people when things go wrong. But usually, in any kind of a job setting, you want to have moderate optimism. However, there are some jobs where you really don't want to be too optimistic. Like imagine if you're a CEO. Well, your job is really to look for problems and, you know, try to anticipate things going wrong and stuff. So you really don't want to have rose-colored glasses. If you're an attorney, you probably don't want to have rose-colored glasses. I mean, there are many, you know, types of jobs and careers where rose-colored glasses is not going to
But
help.
wait, do you really think that an optimistic person is always seeing things not analytically and always having glasses that tend to hide the perspective on things?
No, I'm saying very high scores. What I said is that really you're looking for a moderate score on most of these scales. So you know, you can be moderately optimistic, but you don't want to be overly optimistic because then you're going to be overly trusting and you're going to be less likely to identify problems. And that's why I was saying that there are certain careers that, you know, your job is to identify problems. So it's not going to help you to be really, really high on optimism. Now, self-esteem is a really interesting scale, and I pay a lot of attention to this when I'm recommending people for hire. Low scores mean that you really have high internal standards, and you tend to be a harsh critic when you're not living up to your own standards. Now, you would think that if you're going to hire somebody, you would look for somebody with pretty high self-esteem. But actually, this is a little bit counterintuitive. If I were going to hire somebody, I would want, you know, if it's a question between high self-esteem and lower self-esteem, I would actually choose a little bit on the lower side. And here's why. Because if you have a really high score, it means, this is just what it means on this particular profile, this particular instrument, is that you're putting a lot of energy into maintaining an outward posture that you feel good about yourself, but you're really inwardly more worried than you're willing to reveal. And these kind of people tend to be difficult to coach, they can be defensive, they don't want to hear criticism, and they're less willing to acknowledge the need for personal change. So self-esteem scores really tell me a lot. Yes, Ron?
Would that be more like an entrepreneur?
Well, there are people who, you know, like, in order to feel good about themselves, it has a lot to do with their work. You know, like people in sales, they feel good when they make a sale. So if you are kind of a driven person, and you want to feel better about yourself, you're going to get a whole lot done, and you're going to be a good either entrepreneur or a good employee. Now, I'm not saying that we want you to have really low self-esteem and, you know, be pitiful or anything, but just that if it were a question of, you know, high or more on the low side, I'll pick a little bit less.